Hi, I'm Spiro with SP Woodart, and thank you for joining me. I've had a few uh, wine glass kits laying around for a while, and I want to finish them up and see what I can do with them. And I have actually never tried a wine glass before, but I think it'll be pretty fun. And I'd like to thank all of my subscribers and their wonderful comments that they've been leaving lately. I really appreciate it. So thanks again. So I hope you stay with me, and I'm gonna go have some fun. Ooh. I'm going to start this project out by cutting a 10-inch long by 4 by 4 piece of ash, using my table saw to make 2 cuts, or you can use a miter saw to make 1 cut, but my miter saw is incapacitated right now. You could segment 2 pieces of wood together to make a stem base, but I wanted to have a full piece that the grain flowed from the base all the way up to through the stem. Now please excuse the crude drawing, but I wanted to get the proportions aesthetically pleasing to the eye. The glass is approximately 4 inches long, so then I decided to make the stem 4.3 inches long. Then I made the little accents and the band the same width at 3/8 inch each. Now I used to work as a statistical analyst in psychometrics and educational measurement, so I kind of like to play with numbers a bit. So if you're wondering how I came up with these proportions, it's my little variation on a golden mean or the golden rule, which I hope the end result will be pleasing to the eye. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, you'll want to make sure you leave some room on your wood for tenons on each side of your piece. You'll see what I mean later about the tenons. Here I'm just going to quickly clean up the table saw cuts and then mark the centers of each end. Then I'll use a hole punch on both sides to mark the center, and then I'll take a dead blow hammer and mount a 4-prong spur drive. Now I'll head over to the lathe and mount my wood stock and get ready to chew it up. I'll start with my roughing gouge with an overhand grip, and I'll take small bites on each end first. If you take your roughing gouge and just plunge it in the center of the wood, you're more likely to get large splinters or long pieces to break off. So if you start on the ends first and then do long transverse or planing cuts, you'll hopefully end up with a better surface finish and a truer cylinder. And I usually make the transverse or planing cuts between the ends shallow and slower. And if you're getting a rough surface or ripples, it could be that your lathe speed is too slow, or you're moving your tool left to right or right to left too fast. I'm also holding my gouge just below center. That way, if you do get a catch, it'll dive down into air and not wood. And this applies to spindle work, not bowls. These are just a couple of quick spindle roughing tips that I hope will help if you're having trouble roughing out cylinders. They helped me, and it's some things I've learned over the years, and I can't really think of all the tips right now. I'm sure there's a lot, but hopefully it helps and gives you better tool control and a better surface finish. Then I'll do a quick grind and a hone on my 1-inch skew chisel. Now I'll use my skew chisel to clean up the cylinder surface, make it silky smooth, and then I'll use the skew horizontally to clean up the ends of the spindle. Here I'm going to mark out each end for a tenon so I can attach the spindle to the jaws of my 4-jaw scroll chuck. And for this task, I'm going to use a parting tool and a pair of digital calipers to keep checking the final dimension on my tenons. Then I'll switch back to my skew chisel, use it horizontally to make a dovetail for my chuck jaws. I'm going to mount my spindle blank to my Nova Infinity chuck, and it has been absolutely wonderful, the quick change jaws on this chuck. I'm going to show you here in real time how fast it is to change the jaws. I'm not sponsored by Nova. I just really like this chuck, and it's been a time saver. And I don't have to own multiple chucks. I have one chuck with several jaws that I just change in and out. And that's it. The jaws are off. So now I'm replacing those bowl jaws with these longer sawtooth jaws. And it only takes me a few seconds to install these as well. I just have to look at the numbers and make sure that they correspond with the numbers on the chuck itself. And then I'm all set, and I'm ready to install my spindle blank. Now I'm going to use a 7/16 drill bit and drill a hole on each end of my spindle. I also added a piece of blue painter's tape so I can repeat my drill depth. Then I'm going to take my skew chisel and just clean up the face of the tenon. And I'll use the side of my skew chisel to make sure that it's flat. And I'll also make a small chamfer on the inside of this hole so it'll help to self-center the glass when it sits on it. Now, after finishing both tenons, I'm going to make some various marks along the spindle to help me shape my profiles. So here you can see that the center line is where I'm going to part down the middle and make 2 tenons, one for each of the bases, which are the left and right lines. So without further ado, I'm going to use my spindle detail gouge and shape the profiles. And I will also be checking the diameter of each of the stems. Then I'm going to mark out a slight chamfer on the edge of the top of the stem and cut that chamfer out with my spear scraper. Now I make sure that the diameter of the base is 2.5 inches, which is the diameter of the wine glass. And you could bring this radius all the way through to the top of the base of the other stem, which is the left line past the middle line that I had drew earlier. And now you'll know that both of the diameters of the base of your stems will be exactly the same size. And just so you know, this is a carbide finishing tool, and it looks like I just kept going instead of switching back over to my spindle detail gouge. Now I'm going to use a thin parting tool and part the middle line and make sure that there is the same exact width for each of the bases to the left and the right of the line. Then I'll switch over to a regular, thicker parting tool and try and finish out the tenons for each of the bases of the stems. And I'll also be checking the diameters here and making a dovetail so that these can fit in my chuck. And here's a shot of me using my skew to make the dovetails, which was kind of tricky considering I didn't have a lot of room to work with in there. Continuing on, I will start sanding at 100 grit because the wood was a little rough, It was the wood, honestly. It had nothing to do with my tooling. And then I'll continue on with subsequent grits up to 400. Here I'll use my Robert Sorby micro spiraling tool with a small cutting wheel, and I will make some small spirals on each of the bases and a little band up top on the right stem. And I'll have to do the band for the left stem later on once the profile is finished. I also added a few border lines around the texturing, which will later have burned lines in those gaps. At this time you can also put the border on the left stem base. Then I did a quick sand over the textured spots to smooth them out a little with just a 400 grit sandpaper. Now, just for a guide, I'm going to use my contour gauge duplicator. I think that's what they're called. They come in metal or plastic. This one's plastic. And I'll tape it once I get the profile. And then this will help me or guide me on the left side to get the profile more exact. Now, using my thin parting tool, I'm just going to part the right glass stem off, and I'll actually get it close to, and then I'll twist it the rest of the way off. Using a wood chisel, I'll clean up the nub on the right half, and then use my parting tool to clean up the nub on the left half. Now I'll remove the left half, turn it around, remount it in the chuck, and finish the profiling of this side. And since I started the profile on this half with my carbide finisher, I guess I'll finish it with the carbide finisher. And at this point, I can use the contour gauge to help me match the profile. I'm just marking here some high spots that need to be removed. Now I'm basically just repeating a lot of the processes that I had done before for the right half. I'm going to make a mark and then chamfer the edge of the top, and also finish making the texturing band with the borders, which also includes sanding the textured marks with 400 grit sandpaper. Then I'll just check the profile really quick and move on to coloring. Oh, I almost forgot. And while they're available, you'll want to sand the ends really quick. And I will also use some rubbing alcohol to clean up any dust and grit. Here I have a made color wheel of all of my Sharpie marker colors. It's a different wood, it's pine, but the colors will look fairly similar on the ash. So, decisions. I think I'm going to go with a orangish reddish yellow, which kind of reminds me of Munster cheese. Just thinking of wine and cheese. And with a steady hand, I'll take my red marker and try to stay between my border lines and color in the texture areas. Then I'll take some light cuts with my skew chisel to clean up any of the marker that bled past the border. Then I'll take some sandpaper, and staying away from the lighter color woods and sanding inward, I'm going to dull down the red a little bit and kind of get it blotchy in some areas. Now I'll take my yellow Sharpie marker and go over the red, and you can see how it kind of blends with the red and turns a little orange. Now I'll use my burning wire with handles for safety and burn the border lines which I had cut earlier around the textured spots. And I apologize for not being able to show the burning clip. Now you'll just want to repeat the coloring, sanding, and burning on your second stem. Now I'm going to put a General Finishes salad bowl finish, it's called, on my stems by rubbing it on with a paper towel, and I'm making sure that I don't rub over the red marker yet. You'll want to follow those in a circular pattern when you're wiping that on for the first coat, so you don't smear the marker onto the rest of your light colored wood. Now, after 12 hours at least has gone by for drying of the first coat, I'll do a light sand with a Scotch guard pad, I believe they're called, which is similar to steel wool. You can use that as well if you'd like. And then I'll go ahead and apply another coat, let that dry for 12 hours, and then one more final coat. Now I'm going to mount each of the stems in my vise. This is a metal vise, but I have these wooden jaws with magnets that I made, and they work pretty well, and that'll hopefully hold the piece and not scratch it very much. And I'll also put a towel in here to help soften, and you don't want to actually clamp too tight because you can break your stem. Now I'm going to use my Dozuki saw to cut these tenons off. I'll cut pretty flush, and it has a very thin kerf on it. You can remount them on the lathe if you'd like, and then part the tenons off that way, or you can sand them down, or do what I did here and use a hand saw. The method is really up to you. You just need to make sure that the bottom is flat and square with the stem. Or when you set your wine glass down on a table, it'll be crooked. And then when you start sanding, you want to make sure you sand the same amount off of each stem. That way you don't change the height of either of your glasses. And to finish up the bottoms, I'm going to use some finer grit sandpaper to make it smooth. Eventually I'll sign my name on the bottom and tell what type of wood it is and date it, and then I'll just leave it bare with no finish on the bottom. Now it's time to glue the glass tops onto the stems, and I'm going to use this Loctite brand Superflex clear silicone rubber glue. It's very flexible. It has very good UV protection, and it's pretty much waterproof because it's silicone, and it's non-toxic for food. The only tip here I can say is don't put too much on. The glue won't expand, but if you put too much on and squeeze it in the hole, it'll push out the sides. So you want to put just the right amount in there. And I'll use a popsicle stick here to smooth the glue around the rim. That way when I put it in the hole, I won't touch the sides. And the glass should self-center because we had earlier made a small chamfer on the inside of the hole. And you'll want a steady hand when you insert this glass into the hole. This glue is very goopy and can get everywhere. Oh, and this particular glue will take 24 hours to cure. And here I'm going to turn off the lights so you can see the glass better. And I'll put my son's door sign that I recently made on top of the glasses, and you can see with the board that the glasses are the same height, and the board will add stability to the glass and a little extra added pressure for the glue. Hopefully you're still with me, and if you are, thank you for watching. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I would definitely make this project again. I wouldn't change much of my methods from this video other than maybe trying to turn the stem one by one instead of doing them both together, but I thought that it worked pretty well, and I had a lot of fun making these wine glasses. The only challenging part that I've had with making these wine glasses is taking the photos. I didn't realize how hard taking photos of glass is, but it seemed to work out well. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. The only thing left to do is to go try out the glasses with a nice red wine. Possibly some cheese with it too.